So really what I'd like to hear more of is what happens when the repetitive behaviour isn't effective for that person in dealing with the sensory overload. What might happen then?
Well, what happens is they go into exit strategies. Either they will go straight into the exit strategies, or they will have this sort of repetitive behaviour shield which will insulate them. And we try and stop them because it acts as a barrier between us and them to communication, so we think. But of course this is not so. So they'll go off into these exit strategies, which is basically, I want to separate myself from you because I see you as the source of my sensory overload. You might be wearing a dazzling necklace and I fixate on that, but it means I actually get overloaded with this experience.
Yes.
And so I'll go into these exit strategies, the first of which will be to run away, basically.
Just to remove myself from the source.
To remove myself, to avoid this thing. So I'll remove myself either by shutting my eyes or putting my woody in my head or running away. And that gets me away from what I perceive as the cause of my sensory overload. The second one, which is not quite so common, is known as shutdown. And shutdown involves the brain just stopping, so that the mechanical bits of carrying out an action just don't happen. For example, a colleague of mine was working with a man and he loved books, and so he would turn over the page, he'd get that far and then he couldn't go any further. And she asked him later why this was, and it was, for about 20 minutes he was stuck there. And he said, I needed time to think. And what he actually meant was that he needed time for his motor system to get going and the muscles actually to organise the sequences, to actually do the turning over or move from one room to another.
Because the stimulation, the overload stopped him being able to do that? Is that what you mean?
No, I'm not sure exactly, and I don't think anybody really knows exactly why this is. It's that there are a lot of stages in performing an action. We think, I want to do something, so I go and do it.
So I want to turn the page, I turn the page.
Yes, exactly.
But
for this man, there are all sorts of, he has to have the desire, he has to get the rhythm right, he has to get the muscles in sequence, there are all sorts of stages. And what happens is there's a failure at the sort of motor level. He can't turn the page.
And of course, the more people say, "Oh, come on, just turn the page, come on,"
because
the worse that is.
Yes, because the speech acts as more stuff that needs processing, so it acts as more of a logjam. And
it adds more anxiety, and the more anxious I am, the worse my processing gets.
Absolutely. I find that if I'm trying to get a child to walk from one room to another and they get stuck, don't speak. Because the more you speak, there's a problem. But if you get them to carry a heavy chair, which they've got to use in the other room, that bypasses the blockage. And very often they can manage quite easily.
So giving them something heavy to carry.
Yes, because you're putting in a physical, it's a different pathway, basically. Around you've got this blockage on the motor system. It's a different pathway around.
And also it's functional rather than abstract, isn't it? Moving from one room to the other in some ways quite abstract. Carrying a chair or a book or a pile of something heavy, from one room to another is quite functional, so it's a different pathway.
I remember I saw a young boy and he would never go and see his granny who lived on the opposite side of the road. And his granny was getting a bit fed up with this. And I said to his mum, next time you come home, give him a couple of heavy bags of shopping and point and say, go and take those over to Granny. And off he trotted. No problem. Because that weight is, as I say, a different way of approaching.
Okay, so we haven't just got the fact that this is functional, but actually the weight is attending to another sensory processing issue.
Yes,
that
it's a different pathway.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so we can talk about some of those sensory pathways.
So we've looked so far at avoidance and shutdown, and the third way of getting out of the situation is for me to thump you, because I know either I perceive that you are the source of the difficulties.
So I'm getting rid of you.
Yeah, I'm getting rid of you.
Yeah.
Or in almost a circular way, the aggression can be turned back against myself. Mm-hmm. So I will thump myself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I think thumping, that self-injury is a special case, so to speak, almost comes within, because there are different reasons why people bang their heads.
Well, there's also different reasons why people thump other people. I think sometimes when I'm not going to thump you, but when I thump you, I can also feel you. At this moment of, let's just assume that I have sensory processing problems, and the auditory experience of you and the visual experience of you have just got at this moment so muddled up that you've become overpowering in exactly the way that you're describing. If I feel you, then you become more understandable. I've just felt you. So giving you a good thump actually makes you more solid. It's not an act of aggression to make you go away.
Well, it may be if I squeak.
Yes.
Because there's this extraordinary autobiography by Iris Johansson, and she said she bit children, and she loved it when she bit children and they screamed. And it was even better if her mother shouted at her at the same time.
Okay.
And in fact, in this case, what she was experiencing was synesthesia, which is when the sensory input of, in this case, sound, was experienced as colour. And so when she bit a child, she got these lovely, and there was the screams, she got these lovely coloured trailers going through her mind.
And again, there's a predictability of that, isn't there?
Also, when Mother joined in shouting at her, there was a sort of different set of colours.
Yes.
And of course, nobody would have thought that this child is biting other children because she's synesthetic.
No.
Because she experiences one sense as another.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Yes. And because we don't necessarily understand the reason behind the behaviour.
We have no idea what strategy to employ.
And the strategy for stopping a child biting, well, it's quite an important thing to do, isn't it, to stop a child biting, might not attend to their sensory needs. But of course we also have the need to stop that child biting other children.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
But there are other reasons for self-injury and banging. There can be banging my head on the wall because when I do it, it's like having a delicious conversation when my brain is becoming confused. That's what one man said. But there's also banging your head on the wall because of pain.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the interesting bits of research that has come up now is that before you get self-injury, there's a spike in activity of the sympathetic nervous system, which is the bit of the nervous system which, it's heart rate and raises heart rate and heat and produces heat and breathing rhythm all alters and so forth. And there's a spike in that activity, and it's 10 seconds later before the behaviour, the self-injury behaviour.
Okay, so there's this time lag between that spike of I need to do that and actually doing it.
Now, the point is that you will very often see somebody start, they'll alter their behaviour before they actually start hitting themselves or whatever. A child I was working with laid his head on the table when he was getting upset during this time lag, and he'd look at you and then he'd go. A few seconds later he'd start bang, bang, bang. And so what you'll need to do is to try and get in during that interval.
That 10 seconds. And get in and do what? So you're making the noise.
I'm anticipating what he's going to do.
Yes.
So and I'm confirming him but anticipating it.
So you're confirming his need to do this.
Yes.
You're anticipating it.
Yeah.
So, and by creating the feedback in a different way.
What happens is he gets up and laughs.
Yeah.
And this is a very good way of anticipating behaviour if you can see the sequence starting. Mm-hmm. So you've got that little time lag, and it's not just when I think during self-injury. It's also, I suspect, during aggressive attacks. Mm-hmm. If you can see the beginning of the trigger, if you can get in and anticipate it, very often they'll just turn away and laugh. Yeah. The other day there was a woman who was pinching terribly.
Pinching herself or somebody else?
Everybody else.
Right, yes. Yeah, right.
And but before she did this, she would do this with her head. Okay. There was a change in her behaviour. And I said to them, just as soon as you see that, just take her arm and press it firmly and gently. Yeah. So. Okay. Don't hurt her, obviously, but just firm and gentle. Yeah. And she turned away. Yeah. Immediately smiling.
Yeah. What I'd like to know more about is the research about how do this spike that happens, a spike that happens 10 seconds before the behaviour needs to kick in.
Well, this was done at Birmingham University, the psychology department, Cerebra unit. What they did was they had mittens which measured the sweat levels on the palm of the hands, which are a factor which alters when the person is getting upset. Yes. So they could see the person getting upset before it all actually happened. But I have to say, and this is about self-injury or biting or all the things that people do. But I have to say that I think it's probably true also of aggression towards other people, that you get this rise before you actually get the behaviour, because so often they'll say, oh, she gets red before she attacks, or she'll you can see her eyes sort of changing, her looks changing.